So ESPN just ranked the 50 best WNBA players this season, and it was disrespectful. It was flat out disrespectful to one Caitlin Clark. Not only was it disrespectful to her, they disrespected all the Fever players. And if you guys agree that it was disrespectful, subscribe.
That reaction right there tells you everything you need to know. ESPN just dropped their top 50 WNBA players ranking for the 2025 season, and the disrespect is so blatant, so obvious that even casual fans are calling it out. We're talking about a list that somehow ranks a player who missed an entire season above multiple all-WNBA first-team selections. A list that has bench players ranked higher than starters who carried their teams to the playoffs. This isn't just bad analysis. This is agenda-driven ranking disguised as expert opinion.
Smith looks like she's in. Like, the shape that, that she's in right now means she might end up being a top 50 player. She has never been a top 50 player in her career, and there's always been potential for that. That being said, if she reaches her potential, maybe for...
Let's start with the most egregious example, NaLyssa Smith at number 48. Now, Smith has never been a top 50 player in her entire career. She's shown flashes of potential, sure, but ESPN is ranking her based on what she might become, not what she's actually done. Meanwhile, they're punishing proven players for things completely out of their control. The inconsistency in their methodology is staggering. Are we ranking based on past performance, future potential, current health status? Because ESPN seems to be picking whichever criteria hurts Indiana Fever players the most.
47's a bit crazy. Leo Febish 46, way too low. Way too low. Slightly reduced role. I don't think you understand. She literally leads second in the league in true shooting percentage. She doesn't need a role. She's legitimately one of the best role. She's the best role player in the league. Wheeler as a backup point guard for the Sparks of 45. A 45 is kind of crazy, especially when it's one spot.
Here's where it gets really problematic. Dearica Hamby at 47. The same Dearica Hamby who's been the definition of empty stats her entire career. Her teams consistently underperform when she's on the court. Her defense is so optional, it might as well not exist. Yet somehow she's ranked above Leonie Febish, who finished second in the entire league in true shooting percentage last season. Think about that for a second. ESPN looked at one of the most efficient players in basketball and said, nah, we'll take the player whose team was in last place for most of the season.
At 44, like, really, that feels low when you got Wheeler at 45. But again, we'll see how it goes. Dejanay Carrington, she's not going to play this season. She's still in a boot. Like, she might not play until, what? Like, she might not play this season until August, September,
But wait, it gets worse. Shakira Austin at 44, which feels low on its own, but then you see Erica Wheeler, a backup point guard for the Sparks, ranked one spot higher at 45. Wheeler is a solid player, no question, but she's not more valuable than a starting center who anchors an entire defense. And here's the kicker, Dejanay Carrington is ranked at 43. She's currently in a boot. She might not play until August or September, possibly not until after the World Cup break, but somehow a player who could miss half the season is ranked as a top 50 lock?
Don't hate it. Ezzie Magwar 39, she's injured most of the year. Kayla Thornton 38, I think last season might have been a fluke. The team literally got no better when she left, or no worse when she left. Azare 37, okay. I'm actually alright with Azare 37. Kiki Iriafen 36, this feels low. This feels low for an all-star going into year 2.
Now we need to talk about the Atlanta Dream situation, because this is where ESPN's methodology completely falls apart. They have 6 Dream players in the top 50. 6! The Dream finished in last place last season. They were the worst team in basketball. Yet according to ESPN, they have more top 50 talent than the Indiana Fever, who made the playoffs and won a playoff game. How does that math work exactly? If you have 6 top 50 players on your roster, you don't finish in last place, unless those rankings are completely divorced from reality.
Edwards not on this list, or am I going crazy? Like Camila Cardoso 34. I'm gonna be real here. Camila Cardoso has looked genuinely garbage in preseason. It looked genuinely garbage. I hope she picks it up, but she looked real bad. Alana Smith 33. Yeah, again, it feels a little bit low, but
Camila Cardoso at 34 is particularly baffling. She looked genuinely terrible in preseason. Not just rusty or out of shape, legitimately bad. Her positioning was off. Her timing was wrong. Her conditioning was nowhere near WNBA level. Maybe she turns it around. Maybe by midseason, she's playing like the player South Carolina fans remember. But ranking her 34th right now, based on what we've actually seen, that's not analysis, that's projection based on college reputation.
Real low for Sonia Citron. She was an all-star last year as a rookie, averaging 15 a game, and now has a bigger role with no Brittany Sykes. That feels way too low. No, not lower than Sykes. Not lower than Sykes. It is. Yeah.
And then there's Rickea Jackson at 32. Look, Jackson has talent, but she's going to be the primary scoring option for a Chicago team that's rebuilding. High usage, low efficiency situations tend to expose weaknesses, not highlight strengths. Ranking her above proven veterans who've succeeded in the league for years is the definition of recency bias mixed with college hype. ESPN is betting on potential overproduction, and they're doing it selectively in ways that consistently hurt certain teams.
I mean this. Kennedy Carter has to be higher than Jewel Lloyd. Ariel Atkins for the Sparks. So the Sparks of 4, they're starting 5. Wait, the Sparks of 4, they're starting 5, ranked 26 and higher. Ariel Atkins at 26, above Sonia Citron. I don't know. Courtney Williams 25, Gabby Williams 24.
Here's where the agenda becomes impossible to ignore. Satu Sabali at 15. She suffered a serious concussion last season and is now the 4th option on a loaded Dallas team. She averaged 21 points per game at one point last year, then crashed hard to finish around 13 or 14. That's not a player trending upward. That's a player whose role is shrinking and whose health is a major question mark. Yet she's ranked 15th, ahead of players who stayed healthy and produced all season.
What Angel Reese has done to Diarra Hamby whenever they face off against each other might violate the Geneva Convention. I mean this. If you ever watch Angel Reese's averages against the Sparks for her career are something like 18 and 19. It's something stupid like that. And sorry, I think it's 18 and 17, not 18 and 19. Jesus. I think she's only had 124 game. I think it's like 18 and 17. I think she's lost to the Sparks once in her career. She hit a 3.
Now let's get to the Indiana Fever specifically, because this is where ESPN's disrespect reaches peak levels. Aaliyah Boston at 14. Read that again. Aaliyah Boston, who was robbed of Rookie of the Year, who finished in the top 10 of MVP voting last season, who's in the best shape of her life and has added a three-point shot to her game, is ranked 14th. She dropped 4 spots from last year's ranking. A player who improved in every measurable way somehow got worse, according to ESPN. The same ESPN that has players who missed entire seasons ranked higher.
17. I mean, she was pretty shit last year, and she was pretty bad for Team USA. I think this might be a bit high. I wouldn't put her above Angel. NECA 16, that again feels low. Satu 15, after the super concussion and becoming the 4th option on a team? I don't predict Satu to average more than like 30.
But the Kelsey Mitchell ranking is where this becomes indefensible. Mitchell made all WNBA first team last season. First team. That means ESPN's own analysts voted her as one of the 5 best players in basketball just months ago. And now she's ranked 11th for this season. She didn't get injured. She didn't decline, she didn't change teams or lose her role. She just played elite basketball all year. And somehow that earned her a ranking behind Alyssa Thomas, who's great, but also just had a career year that's unlikely to repeat at age 32.
Unrivaled MVP is in the shape of her life and is now shooting the three ball off the back of being voted as one of the top 10 players in the WNBA last year, gone down 4 spots as in a prediction. Ryan Howard, 13. The idea of Ryan Howard is about the player of Ryan Howard. Kalia Copper, 12. She was terrible last year. She was terrible. She was the offensive centerpiece for the Mercury. What are we talking about? She was awful last.
And then there's the Sabrina Ionescu ranking at 6 that we need to address, because this perfectly illustrates ESPN's double standard. Sabrina ended last season on an 11-game streak of scoring 18 points or fewer, 11 straight games where their 6th-ranked player couldn't crack 20 points. She had 0 points in the 4th quarter of a playoff elimination game, 0. In the most important quarter of her season, she disappeared completely. The Liberty went 6-5 to close the season, while Sabrina averaged under 15 points during that stretch. But she's ranked 6th because of reputation, not production.
Now, this is one of the most disrespectful rankings I've ever seen, because Sabrina Ionescu is ahead of Caitlin Clark. Sabrina Ionescu stunk it up in the playoffs last year. So while Caitlin was injured, fair enough, Sabrina stunk it up in the playoffs last year, was injured the entire offseason, is predicting for this year. It says here, and was just started when she named Rookie of the Year. Yet injuries limited her to 13 games. She was still named an All-Star. So she's down at 10 because she got injured. What about player? But like, it's very clear on this list that currently being injured is irrelevant.
Now we get to Caitlin Clark at 10, and this is where you see the full picture of what ESPN is doing. Last year, they had her at 4. Since then, she's done nothing but prove she belongs in that conversation. Rookie of the Year runner-up, led her team to the playoffs as the 3rd seed after the All-Star break, transformed the Fever from lottery team to playoff contender. And ESPN dropped her 6 spots. Their justification? She got injured a year ago. Not this year, not recently. A year ago, she had an injury that she's fully recovered from. Meanwhile, Napheesa Collier, who just had double ankle surgery and hasn't run in 7 months, is ranked 3rd. Let's break down the logic here, because it's important. ESPN is telling us that an injury from over a year ago that a player has completely recovered from is enough to drop them 6 spots. But a player who had surgery on both ankles 3 months ago and is still in recovery, that player stays in the top 3. You cannot have it both ways. Either current health matters or it doesn't. Either we're predicting this season's performance or we're not. ESPN chose to apply injury concerns only when it hurt Caitlin Clark's ranking, and ignored them when it would hurt their preferred players. The Napheesa Collier ranking at 3 is the smoking gun that proves this entire list is broken. If you genuinely believe she's healthy and ready to dominate, then she should be ranked 2nd, maybe even 1st. She's that good when healthy. But if you're being realistic about a player who had major surgery on both ankles and hasn't been able to train properly for months, then she's not a top 3 player for this season. She's probably not top 10. There's no logical middle ground where she's exactly 3rd. That ranking only makes sense if you're trying to preserve her reputation while acknowledging the injury concerns just enough to keep Breanna Stewart ahead of her. And speaking of Stewart at 4, that's actually one of the few rankings that makes sense. She figured out her shooting mechanics, she's healthy, she's on a championship contending team. 4 is probably right. But notice how Stewart, who had a down year by her standards, stayed put. Clark, who had a historic rookie season, dropped 6 spots. The pattern is clear. Here's what really exposes the agenda. Indiana has 3 players in the top 50 total. 3. Meanwhile, Atlanta has 6, New York has 6, the Aces have 5. The Dream, who finished dead last, have more top 50 players than the Fever, who made the playoffs. If you're ESPN, you're essentially arguing that Indiana overachieved with inferior talent, while Atlanta underachieved despite having elite talent. Except that's not how basketball works. Talent wins games. If Atlanta really had 6 top 50 players, they wouldn't have been in the lottery. The Los Angeles Sparks have 4 starters ranked in the top 50, including Derica Hamby at 47, Erica Wheeler at 45, and Ray Burrell at 26. 4 starters, all ranked as top 50 players. The Sparks won 25 games last season and missed the playoffs. But sure, ESPN, tell us more about how they have more elite talent than the team that won 20 games and made the postseason. Look at the Chicago Sky situation. They have 5 players in ESPN's top 50. Angel Reese at 22, which is probably fair. Camila Cardoso at 34, despite looking terrible in preseason. Chennedy Carter at 32. Marina Mabrey at 31, and Rachel Bainham somewhere in there. 5 top 50 players for a team that's rebuilding and likely headed for a bottom 3 finish. Does that make any sense at all? Compare that to Indiana. Caitlin Clark at 10, Aaliyah Boston at 14, Kelsey Mitchell at 11. That's it. 3 total. The team that made the playoffs, that went on a historic second-half run, that has the Rookie of the Year and an all-WNBA first-team selection, has fewer ranked players than teams that didn't make the postseason. The math doesn't math, and we haven't even talked about the complete absence of Nalissa Smith and Lexi Hall from this list. Smith had her best professional season last year. Hall was one of the best three-point shooters in basketball. Both were critical to Indiana's playoff run. Neither made ESPN's top 50. But Derica Hamby, whose team was in last place for most of the year, made it at 47. The Kelsey Plum ranking at 7 is another example of reputation over production. Plum is talented, no question. But she's playing on a team with no point guard, limited spacing, and serious chemistry questions after losing key pieces. She's going to have to do everything for that Mystics team, which typically leads to inefficiency and frustration. Ranking her 7th is betting on her to have a career year in the worst possible situation. Here's the thing about beat writers and national media. They have favorites. They have narratives they want to push. And when the data doesn't support those narratives, they manipulate the criteria until it does. That's what we're seeing here. ESPN decided certain players and certain teams deserve to be ranked higher, then worked backwards to justify it. The Alyssa Thomas ranking at 2 is the perfect example. She's 32 years old, coming off a career year. Career years at that age don't typically repeat. The physical demands of playing her style of basketball, being a bulldozer who initiates all contact, that takes a toll. And if the referees actually start calling fouls consistently this season like they've indicated they will, her game is going to suffer. But ESPN has her at 2 because she fits their narrative of the gritty, underappreciated veteran who doesn't get enough respect. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark, who's 22 years old and improving every single game, gets dropped to 10 because she doesn't fit the narrative ESPN wants to tell. She's too popular, she's too hyped, she brings in too many new fans who don't know the right way to appreciate women's basketball. So they have to take her down a peg. Remind everyone that she's not actually that special, that there are at least 9 players better than her. Except the on-court results tell a completely different story. The Fever with Caitlin Clark were a playoff team. The Fever without Caitlin Clark were a lottery team. That's not opinion, that's math. Their record with her versus without her is night and day. She transformed that franchise in 1 season. But sure, she's only the 10th best player in the league. The disrespect to Aaliyah Boston might actually be worse than the Clark ranking, because at least with Clark, you can pretend it's about injury concerns or adjustment period or whatever excuse you want to use. But Boston? She did everything right. She won Rookie of the Year in 2023. She improved in year 2. She added new skills to her game. She stayed healthy. She led her team to the playoffs. She finished in the top 10 of MVP voting. And she dropped 4 spots in ESPN's rankings. How does that happen? How does a player who checks every single box for improvement somehow get ranked lower than she was the year before? The only explanation is that ESPN decided Indiana can't have 3 players in the top 10, so someone had to drop. And since they weren't moving Clark up where she belongs, Boston had to fall. Think about what ESPN is really saying with these rankings. They're saying that Kelsey Plum, who plays for a team that won 14 games last year, is a better player than Aaliyah Boston, who plays for a team that won 20 games and made the playoffs. They're saying that Erike Ogunbowale, whose team missed the postseason, is better than Kelsey Mitchell, who made All-NBA first team. They're saying that 6 Atlanta Dream players, whose team finished in last place, are better than the 3 Indiana Fever players who actually won games. The rankings aren't just wrong. They're insulting. They insult the intelligence of fans who watched these games. They insult the players who produced at elite levels and got ranked behind players who didn't. And they insult the integrity of sports analysis by pretending this is based on objective evaluation when it's clearly driven by narrative preferences. So here's the question ESPN needs to answer. If the Atlanta Dream really have 6 top 50 players, why did they finish in last place? If the Sparks really have 4 top 50 starters, why did they miss the playoffs? If Sabrina Ionescu is really the 6th best player in basketball, why did she score 0 fourth-quarter points in an elimination game? If Nafisa Collier is really the 3rd best player despite not running in 7 months, why is Caitlin Clark ranked 10th for an injury from over a year ago that she's fully recovered from? The answers to those questions reveal the truth. These rankings aren't about basketball. They're about protecting certain narratives and certain players while diminishing others. And the players getting diminished just happen to be the ones playing in Indiana. Coincidence? Not a chance. This is agenda-driven analysis disguised as expert opinion, and it's time to call it what it is: disrespectful, inconsistent, and completely divorced from the reality of what actually happens on the court. What do you think? Are these rankings as disrespectful as they seem, or is there some logic I'm missing? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that subscribe button if you want more honest WNBA analysis, and let's have